The setting sun turned the lake into a mirror of orange and pink. The forest, full of tall, old trees, was quiet, like a wall around a secret place. The air smelled like pine trees and wet earth, promising a calm getaway. This was meant to be a relaxing vacation, a break from everyday stress, in a place chosen for its quiet beauty. The feeling of being alone here was both nice and, looking back, a little scary. A small path led to the edge of a cliff. The ground dropped sharply, showing a stunning view. The lake, now a shiny reflection of the evening sky, was far below. The steep drop was both beautiful and a bit frightening. The view was amazing, a wide picture of nature's beauty. But there was also a feeling of danger, a reminder that life is fragile. The peaceful scene had a hidden tension, like the calm was just a cover for something less peaceful. The tranquil evening shattered as Margaret slipped and fell from the cliff's edge. James, who was with her at the time, watched in horror as she plummeted to the base below. He immediately called 911, his voice a frantic mix of panic and despair. By the time the first responders and police arrived, James was found wailing, his body racked with sobs. He was barely coherent, repeating Margaret's name over and over again. Margaret's body lay still, a stark and tragic contrast to the beauty of the surrounding landscape. The initial assessment, given the circumstances, was a devastating accident. The cliff's edge, despite its picturesque view, was known to be hazardous, and local records documented 2 similar accidental falls in the past 10 years. This history lent credence to the immediate assumption of a tragic accident. The officers, while maintaining professional detachment, were clearly moved by James's profound grief. Yellow tape was quickly deployed, transforming the scenic overlook into a site of investigation. The first responders began their examination, noting the position of Margaret's body and the surrounding terrain. James, still overwhelmed with grief, struggled to answer their questions. He recounted their shared moments on the cliff, the sudden slip, and the terrifying fall. His grief appeared genuine and overwhelming. Given the circumstances, the area's history, and James's distraught state, there was no initial reason to suspect anything other than a heartbreaking accident. The scene was one of raw, unadulterated tragedy, a husband's desperate grief echoing through the quiet forest. James, at 35, and Margaret, at 67, formed an unlikely couple that turned heads. Their age difference was significant, a fact that was impossible to ignore. Margaret, a wealthy widow, had lived a full life, while James was still navigating his. They met at an art gallery opening, an event Margaret frequently attended. James, a charming and ambitious artist, caught her eye. Margaret, in turn, was captivated by his youthful energy and artistic passion. Their relationship blossomed quickly. Margaret, accustomed to a life of refinement and solitude, found herself invigorated by James's presence. He brought a sense of adventure and spontaneity back into her life. James, on the other hand, was drawn to Margaret's sophistication, her wisdom, and the financial security she offered. They enjoyed each other's company, attending cultural events, traveling to exotic locations, and sharing quiet evenings together. However, the age gap was a constant topic of conversation among their acquaintances. Some questioned James's motives, wondering if he was genuinely in love or simply after Margaret's wealth. Others admired Margaret's open-mindedness and her willingness to embrace life at any age. Despite the whispers, James and Margaret presented a picture of happiness. They were often seen together, holding hands, and enjoying each other's company. They seemed genuinely happy. Their relationship started fast. Margaret made sure that James was well taken care of. James seemed happy, and he seemed to love Margaret. However, there were questions about the relationship. People wondered if James loved Margaret or her money. They wondered if Margaret loved James, or if she loved having a young, handsome man by her side. Despite this, James and Margaret seemed to be a happy couple. Can a relationship with such a significant age gap truly be based on genuine love? Were there subtle signs that something was amiss? The image of James wailing in grief is a powerful one. Was it sincere, or was there something else hidden beneath the surface? Have you ever questioned the motives behind a relationship, especially when there's a significant age difference or a disparity in wealth? Have you ever witnessed a relationship where one person seemed to be taking advantage of the other? It's a difficult question, but it's one that often arises in situations like James and Margaret's. What are your initial thoughts about their relationship? Was it genuine affection or something more complex? Share your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think happened on the cliff? Was it a tragic accident, or is there a deeper story to be told? James, at 35, was a man whose charm masked a simmering discontent. He possessed a natural charisma, a talent for connecting with people, but his ambition far outstripped his current circumstances. He craved the finer things in life, the luxurious vacations, the designer clothes, the exclusive social circles, a lifestyle he believed he was entitled to. However, his reality was far from his aspirations. His artistic pursuits, while a source of genuine passion, had proven financially unreliable. He'd honed his skills, showcased his work in local galleries, and networked within the art scene, yet the financial rewards remained elusive. He watched as his contemporaries, some with arguably less talent, achieved the success he so desperately desired. This disparity fueled his frustration, creating a constant undercurrent of resentment. Margaret, with her established wealth and refined lifestyle, represented the life James yearned for. Her generosity initially felt like a lifeline, a way to bridge the gap between his dreams and his reality. However, as their relationship progressed, he began to feel a sense of dependency that chafed against his pride. He felt like a kept man, a feeling that was both flattering and deeply unsettling. Margaret, despite her affection for James, remained a shrewd and independent woman. She had built her fortune through careful planning and astute business decisions, and she was not about to relinquish control of her finances. She was generous, but she was also pragmatic. She wanted to make sure her legacy was secured. This caution, which James initially admired, began to feel like a constraint. The turning point came with Margaret's decision to revise her will. James had always assumed that he would be a primary beneficiary, that her wealth would provide the financial security he craved. However, the revised will, as he understood it, significantly reduced his inheritance. He felt betrayed, his dreams of financial freedom shattered. He started to feel like she was using him. He felt like she was keeping him around until she was ready to get rid of him. He began to view their relationship as a transaction, a means to an end. He felt trapped, his youthful ambitions stifled by Margaret's control. The lavish lifestyle he had envisioned was slipping away, replaced by a growing sense of desperation. He was tired of being the younger, charming companion. He wanted to be the master of his own destiny. The resentment festered, transforming his charm into a calculated facade. He was running out of time, and he needed a solution, a way to secure the life he believed he deserved. He was ready to stop being the pet and start being the owner. Amidst James's growing frustration and financial anxieties, the $3.7 million life insurance policy stood as a beacon of hope, a potential solution to his mounting problems. Margaret, always meticulous in her financial planning, had taken out the policy years prior, long before she met James. It was intended to secure her estate and provide for her chosen beneficiaries. However, as James's resentment grew, he began to see the policy not as a safety net for Margaret's future, but as a potential windfall for his own. He paid close attention to the policy details, noting the beneficiaries and the specific terms. He saw the policy as a way out, a means to achieve the financial freedom he so desperately craved. He began to think about how he could make the policy his. He began to see the policy as his ticket to the life he always wanted. Margaret, trusting and perhaps a bit naive in her affection for James, never suspected his growing interest in the policy. She viewed it as a simple matter of financial prudence, a way to ensure her legacy. She had no reason to suspect that James was considering it as a means to an end. The policy had a long and complex history, with various beneficiaries and amendments over the years. James, with his newfound focus, meticulously reviewed the paperwork, familiarizing himself with every clause and stipulation. He found the original paperwork of the policy within Margaret's personal files. He realized that he was the primary beneficiary. He knew he could make this work. He began to see the policy as a gift. The sheer amount of money involved was staggering, enough to transform his life overnight. It represented a chance to escape his financial struggles, to pursue his artistic dreams without constraint, and to finally live the life he believed he deserved. The policy became an obsession, a constant presence in his thoughts. He began to see it as his only way out. With the $3.7 million life insurance policy as his potential salvation, James began to formulate a plan. He needed to find a way to access the money, a way to transform his dreams into reality. He needed to make it look like an accident. The vacation to the secluded lake and the treacherous cliff edge provided the perfect opportunity. The isolated location meant there would be few, if any, witnesses. He carefully planned the trip, selecting a remote cabin far from any populated areas. He wanted it to be just the two of them, a romantic getaway that would serve as the backdrop for his sinister plan. He made sure that the cabin was located near the cliff. He knew that the cliff was dangerous, and he knew that it would be easy to make it look like an accident. The days leading up to the vacation were a carefully constructed facade. James played the role of the doting partner, showering Margaret with affection and making her feel loved and cherished. He wanted her to trust him. He wanted her to feel safe. He wanted her to have no idea what he was planning. He knew that he had to be convincing. On the day of the accident, James led Margaret to the cliff's edge, a spot known for its breathtaking views. He knew that she loved the view. He knew that she would want to take pictures. He made sure that they were alone. He made sure that there was no one around to see what he was about to do. As Margaret stood near the edge, admiring the scenery, James made his move. A subtle push, a carefully timed stumble, and Margaret was gone, tumbling down the cliff face. He acted shocked, he acted horrified. He immediately called 911, his voice filled with feigned panic and grief. He was careful to make it sound like a tragic accident. He was careful to make it sound like he was the grieving husband. In the aftermath of Margaret's death, James meticulously crafted a narrative of a grieving husband, devastated by the sudden loss of his beloved wife. He played the role to perfection, his performance convincing everyone around him. He knew that he had to be convincing. He knew that he had to make everyone believe that he was innocent. He was the picture of heartbreak, his eyes red-rimmed, his voice choked with emotion. He spoke of their love, their shared dreams, and the cruel twist of fate that had taken her from him. He attended the funeral, his face etched with sorrow, his every gesture conveying the depth of his loss. He spoke to her friends and family, offering condolences and sharing fond memories. He was the perfect image of a grieving husband. He was careful to maintain consistency in his story, repeating the details of the accident with convincing accuracy. He described how Margaret had slipped on the loose gravel, how he had tried to grab her but was unable to save her. He spoke of his horror as he watched her fall, his desperate cries for help echoing through the empty landscape. He painted a picture of a helpless husband, a victim of circumstance. He even went so far as to express his guilt, lamenting his inability to prevent the tragedy. He questioned his own actions, wondering if he could have done more to protect her. He tortured himself with what-ifs, creating the impression of a man consumed by remorse. He was a master manipulator, using his grief as a shield, deflecting any suspicion that might arise. He was careful to avoid any inconsistencies in his story. He knew that the police would be watching him. He knew that they would be looking for any signs of guilt. He was determined to give them nothing. He was determined to make them believe that he was innocent. He maintained a low profile in the weeks following Margaret's death, staying close to home and avoiding social gatherings. He wanted to give the impression of a man in mourning, a man too heartbroken to engage with the outside world. He knew that this was the best way to avoid suspicion. He knew that this was the best way to make everyone believe that he was innocent. He was patient. He knew that he had to wait for the right time to make his move. He knew that he had to wait for the dust to settle. He knew that he had to wait for the right moment to claim his inheritance. He was playing the long game and he was determined to win. Despite the initial assumption of a tragic accident, detectives Miller and Davies, seasoned investigators with a keen eye for detail, began to harbor suspicions. James's demeanor, while seemingly grief-stricken, lacked a certain authenticity. His emotional responses felt staged, his tears too readily available, his sorrow too performative. There was a disconnect between his words and his actions, a subtle dissonance that set off alarm bells in the detectives' minds. Furthermore, inconsistencies in James's alibi began to emerge. His account of the events leading up to Margaret's fall didn't quite align with the physical evidence found at the scene. He claimed that Margaret had slipped on loose gravel, but the ground was dry and stable. He described trying to grab her, but there were no signs of a struggle, no disturbed vegetation, no scuff marks on the ground. His story was starting to unravel, thread by thread. The discovery of the $3.7 million life insurance policy, with James as the sole beneficiary, shifted the focus of the investigation. The substantial payout provided a clear motive, casting a dark shadow over James's professed grief. The detectives began to scrutinize his financial records, uncovering a trail of debt and a desperate need for money. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to fit together, painting a picture far different from the one James had presented. The investigation into James's financial history revealed a man teetering on the brink of ruin. His artistic aspirations had failed to translate into financial stability, leaving him with a mountain of debt and a growing sense of desperation. Credit card statements showed a pattern of lavish spending, far exceeding his income. Bank records revealed bounced checks and overdue notices. He was living beyond his means, his lifestyle funded by Margaret's generosity. The detectives discovered that James had made several large withdrawals from Margaret's account in the weeks leading up to her death. He had also attempted to sell some of her valuable artwork, claiming that she had given him permission. However, when questioned, Margaret's friends and family denied any knowledge of such an arrangement. The financial evidence was mounting, painting a clear picture of James's motive. But the financial trail wasn't the only thing unraveling James's carefully constructed facade. Further investigation revealed not only inconsistencies in James's story about his relationship with Margaret, but also a secret life he had been leading. Witnesses reported seeing the couple arguing in the days before their vacation. Neighbors overheard heated exchanges, and a waiter at a local restaurant recalled a tense dinner where James had stormed out. These accounts contradicted James's portrayal of a loving and harmonious relationship, suggesting underlying tensions that he had kept hidden. More damningly, evidence emerged of James's infidelity. Phone records showed a string of late-night calls and text messages to another woman. Detectives tracked down this woman, who revealed an ongoing affair, complete with secret rendezvous and promises of a future together once James was free. This discovery further eroded James's credibility, portraying him not as a grieving husband, but as a deceitful and opportunistic individual. The seemingly straightforward scene of a tragic accident, with its beautiful vista and quiet surroundings, yielded critical evidence that contradicted James's account. A meticulous forensic examination of the cliff's edge and the area below revealed discrepancies that painted a drastically different picture. The crucial finding was the angle of Margaret's fall. Forensic experts, using advanced techniques, reconstructed the trajectory of her descent. Their analysis revealed that the angle of her fall was inconsistent with a simple slip from the cliff's edge. If she had slipped as James claimed, her trajectory would have been different, following a more predictable downward path. Instead, the analysis showed a more direct, almost pushed downward trajectory. This finding was pivotal. It directly contradicted James's narrative of an accidental slip and suggested a more deliberate act. The angle of the fall indicated that Margaret had been propelled, rather than simply falling. This physical evidence, combined with the other inconsistencies in James's story, began to solidify the detective's suspicion of foul play. Further examination of the area near the cliff's edge showed faint scuff marks and disturbed vegetation, subtle signs of a potential struggle. These findings, though not conclusive on their own, added weight to the forensic analysis of the fall's trajectory. The crime scene, once believed to be the site of a tragic accident, was now revealing itself as a potential scene of a calculated crime. How can greed and ambition drive someone to such extreme measures? What red flags should have been noticed earlier? Subtle shifts in behavior or inconsistencies in stories that were overlooked in the initial stages of the investigation? Share your insights in the comments. Do you think the police should have suspected James earlier, given his initial demeanor and the circumstances surrounding Margaret's death? Or was their initial acceptance of an accident understandable? The crucial piece of evidence that solidified James's guilt was the forensic reconstruction of Margaret's fall. The analysis revealed that the angle of her descent was inconsistent with a simple slip. It showed a trajectory that suggested she had been pushed, propelled over the edge. This revelation, combined with the financial motive in James's inconsistencies, painted a clear picture of a calculated crime, not a tragic accident. The police now knew it was not a slip, it was a push. The forensic evidence, combined with the financial motive and James's increasingly inconsistent statements, led to his arrest. The news of Margaret's death, initially reported as a tragic accident, took a dramatic turn, becoming a sensational media story. The significant age gap between James and Margaret, along with the revelation of his financial struggles and his affair, fueled public speculation and fueled intense media scrutiny. The trial was a media spectacle, with every detail of the case dissected and analyzed. The prosecution presented a compelling case, highlighting the inconsistencies in James's story, the financial motive, and the damning physical evidence. The defense, however, attempted to portray James as a grieving husband, a victim of circumstance. They argued that the fall was accidental, a tragic consequence of a moment of carelessness. The trial became a battle of credibility, with the prosecution and defense presenting conflicting narratives. The prosecution emphasized the cold, calculated nature of the crime, while the defense painted a picture of a man devastated by grief. The jury was tasked with sifting through the evidence, weighing the testimonies, and determining the truth. After weeks of deliberation, the jury returned with a verdict: guilty of first-degree murder. The courtroom was filled with a palpable sense of relief for Margaret's family and friends, who had endured weeks of agonizing uncertainty. James, his face pale and his eyes filled with a mixture of shock and despair, was led away in handcuffs. The sentencing was a somber affair. The judge, acknowledging the gravity of the crime and the devastating impact on Margaret's loved ones, imposed a life sentence without the possibility of parole. James's conviction and sentencing brought a measure of closure to the case, but the pain of their loss would forever linger for Margaret's family and friends. The case of Margaret and James serves as a stark reminder of the destructive power of unchecked ambition and the devastating consequences of deceit. It highlights the importance of vigilance, especially in relationships where there are significant power imbalances or financial disparities. It is crucial to be aware of red flags, to trust your instincts, and to seek professional advice when necessary. Regular review of legal documents, such as wills and insurance policies, is essential to ensure they reflect your wishes and protect your interests. Open communication and transparency are crucial in any relationship, especially those involving financial matters. This case could have been prevented if Margaret had been more cautious about her relationship with James, if she had paid attention to the warning signs of his growing desperation, and if she had taken steps to protect her assets. This tragic story serves as a reminder of the devastating consequences of greed. How can we better protect ourselves and our loved ones from such betrayals? What measures can we take to ensure that our relationships are built on trust and mutual respect, rather than on manipulation and deceit? If you found this story compelling, please like, subscribe, and share. What other cases would you like us to cover? In closing, this case serves as a chilling reminder of the lengths to which some will go to achieve their desires. It is a cautionary tale that highlights the importance of vigilance, trust, and open communication in all our relationships.